Welcome to the Better Together podcast. This podcast and community were inspired by Ecclesiastes 4:9-12, which says two people are better than one. When two people work together, they get more work done. If one person falls, the other person can reach out to help. And also by Galatians 6:2, which says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. So I saw a need that wasn't being met. So I created this community and podcast so that people could find community where they could connect, encourage, inspire, and support one another through real life stories, struggles, loss, heartache, and triumphs. Life is messy, and I know how powerful our stories are and how sharing our stories can be healing for us and also for those that hear them by giving others hope. My guest for this episode is Loni Elizabeth. Loni is a multifaceted writer, speaker, and media personality. She is the founder of Not Just Sunday, a Christian lifestyle brand that exists to make biblical living practical. Loni strives to help others walk in the refined version of themselves through humor, fashion, and motivation. Loni, welcome.
Hi.
I'm so glad that you're with us. And we're just going to kind of dive right in. Like, Loni, I want you to start by sharing your story.
Okay, absolutely. Oh my goodness, what an honor. Um, so basically, the long and short of it is, I grew up in a pastoral household. My parents became church ministry leaders when I was a preteen, so like 12 going to 13. So I had a portion of my life where faith was not relevant, at least as far as I understood. Um, and then suddenly, almost radically, because their transformation was so like immediate, I was just plunged into this completely different lifestyle. And it was a little bit hard because I remember that was right when you're transitioning from elementary into middle school. And that is when the hormones kick in and the puberty kicks in, and, things like the school dance kicks in, and, the things that you used to wear, you can't wear anymore. So it was a little bit of a confusing transition. But my parents were so gracious in the sense that they made sure that, like my siblings and I, that the transition was not something that we endured alone, which is why I'm really excited about this podcast talking about community, was that they did their very best to plug us into team sports or, groups within the church community where there was other people around our age that we can connect with and relate to. So I grew up in that type of household. I was a preteen, and one of my biggest struggles at the time was once your parents, and I think this can apply to anybody that has parents that are in any type of leadership, not just church leadership. So, like, if you have parents that are in politics, or parents that, I don't know, coach a popular sports team, you are known as their kid, right? And the both the highs and the lows of your parents' lifestyle choices and a career path falls on you, right? So if the sermon wasn't so great on Sunday, I'm going to hear about that at school during the week. If there's anybody in my grade or in my class that happens to go to my church or has a relative that does, right? So dealing with that sort of peer pressure made me feel like I was visible, but not by choice. And then at the same time, invisible. Let's say if I went through a phase where I'm dyeing my hair and my clothes are dark, right? You see it as, oh, she's being rebellious, but you're not looking at maybe what's really going on, right? I'm wearing dark clothes because I don't want to be noticed. So I'm not wearing bright colors, right? But few people took the time to have those type of conversations with me or people like me. And so I always knew from then that in the future, when I turn into the more mature and developed version of myself, that I wanted to create a space for people that never felt like that. So then from there, I would look for ways to express myself. So I threw myself into like the performing arts, because the performing arts, you get to not only express yourself, but you get to put on whatever character you want, right? You get to be someone else for a day or for a few hours at a show performance. So whether it was through dance performances or theater performances, I got to be someone else. Um, and that brought me so much peace. And as adults now, we can see how that could turn dangerous, right? But at the time, that was my outlet for freedom. I wasn't finding it in other places because I felt like everything I did was being examined in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so I went to college and I pursued the performing arts in college as well. Um, I was very gifted, very talented. I know now that what really helped me was really my spiritual gifts, right? Of being able to communicate well, my gifts of leadership, right? It flowed in that space. However, I was still publicly hiding, if you will. I was hiding behind the characters I would play, or I was hiding behind my talents and skill set. And there's a process that we go through in the theatrical performance world where whatever character you're about to bring forth, you need to do background research and to understand the whys of the choices your character makes within the piece. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So we have to do that no matter what piece we're doing. It doesn't matter if we are the lead character or a background character, everyone has to do this sort of character breakdown. I just had this realization that I work harder to understand the characters that I play than putting in the work to learn me and to learn what God, Jesus, what the Bible even means for me. And at some point in my college life, that tension caught up with me. And one of my college professors actually called me out. And he was just saying, he's like, you are fighting a battle personally that is being publicly displayed every time that you come on stage to perform something. He's like, you're putting way more work on the audience to figure out what you're trying to convey. And that's the opposite of what an actor is supposed to do. And in other words, he just basically told me, you need to reevaluate why you're here, if this is what you want to do, and really what you're meant to do in life, because you being confused confuses the storyline of the play and it slows the story down, right? And so no one is going to book you, hire you, if you are going to do that, if you're going to smear their piece. And so shortly after that, I dropped out of school and that whole industry completely, and just really took a couple years off. And I just worked, like regular jobs, and took some time doing like missionary work with my parents, really because I was lost and just trying to figure out who I was. So I was taking in the words of my professor at the time and also trying to realize, who am I really? Who am I truly? And I encountered God, during that season. And he basically just let me know that nothing was wasted. And all that I went through, all of my experiences, was so that I could turn around and help people who were once upon a time in my shoes.
Love that. And you are so involved in community. And of course, with this
Mhm,
podcast being about community, can you
mhm.
talk about the importance of having community?
For sure. Community, I have learned, can be a refuge,
Mhm.
it can be a safe haven. Community provides, if you're in the right community, it provides that space of discovery, self discovery, but with boundaries,
Mhm.
right? Discovery, but with guidance, right? Especially if you have mentors or if you have peers that are on the journey with you, it saves you from feeling like you are drowning continually. Because when you look left and right, it's like, no, no, no. I have people helping me to stay afloat. Community matters. Another aspect that I admire about community is this feeling of having teammates. The
Mhm.
feeling of having teammates. And when you look at any team dynamic, you realize that there is the person that is the best catcher, so they're going to be the goalie. You, the person that runs faster, so they're going to, be the forward. Or so you start realizing like who in the community has the strength in what areas and who to lean on in which particular seasons. So that is probably a highlight that I would share about what community means to me.
I love that. Talk about the relaunch of your digital magazine, and just the Not Just Sunday brand. Like, what is the mission? What is the vision behind it?
Absolutely. So, Not Just Sunday as a whole really exists to help people live for God consistently, right? You have your traditional devotional, you have your typical Sunday or Saturday or Wednesday, service setting. But then beyond that, right? Like actual real life, sometimes it's a little hard to apply to apply the principles you learn. And so what's not just Sunday exists to do is use fashion, which is like a huge umbrella, a huge industry, and it's like this universal language that everyone understands. Even if I don't speak your speaking language, if I like your shoes, I'm gonna point at your shoes and give you a thumbs up, right? Right, no matter where I am in the world. And so fashion is a powerful force. If Jesus encourages us to use whatever methods, whatever avenues necessary to communicate his message, why can't fashion be the avenue that I use, right? And so the magazine that I'm creating is how can I produce content that is flashy, that is fun, that's relevant, that is exciting to look at, so that people can consume holistic media, right? The same way that people look at and read things like Vogue or Elle magazine or whatever other popular media source
Yeah.
that exists. Yeah, and so that's essentially what the magazine serves to do. So it's twofold: one for the reader to enjoy it and realize, hey, I'm getting the word, I'm getting the gospel, and I'm also looking at something that's entertaining and like eye-catching and aesthetically pleasing, and I don't have to worry about my morals being compromised or me being exposed to something that God would not be pleased with. Like, all that work is done for you. And then on the other end of it, since my team and I, since we get to source everything that goes in it, we get to produce the photo shoots ourselves or write some of these articles ourselves or interview amazing people ourselves. And in that, because all throughout, I didn't get a chance to share this, but all throughout this journey of me trying to discover who I was, God opened a door for me to model, right? Because it's like, oh, wait, like I'm not athletic, but I have always been tall and slender. And so I just kept stumbling onto opportunities to model, whether it was runway or whether it was photo shoots or like as a spokesmodel at events. And so I'm like, oh man, there are so many horror stories about the modeling and fashion industries. But it's like modeling actually helped me get closer to God and the type of woman God wanted me to be. What if I can like copy and paste those experiences for other people, right? Especially for other young women that are dealing with like insecurity or trying to figure out who they are, what they're called to. So we set up photo shoots that are like ministerial photo shoots, where from like the casting process to doing the hair and makeup, we are just speaking life into whoever the model is going to be, whether they're male or female. And so that way, by the time they get on set and they're wearing their best hair, best makeup, super cool outfit, they are able to perform well or model well because we've spent the last 2.5 hours encouraging them and building them up. And so the pictures come out phenomenal, right? And so then they get to see their picture produced in the magazine. So it's just like, this full cycle of encouragement and just administering that not just Sunday mindset in at different touch points. That was a lot, but I hope I
I love
explained
that. No,
well.
I love that. So speaking of like the fashion industry, like how do you
Mhm.
navigate the highs and lows of the industry through godly standards, not worldly standards?
You know, some seasons it's harder than others because let me tell you, you can be dealing with something internally
Mhm.
and it's like the fashion industry will amplify it. They will find it and they will amplify it. And so if you are not grounded in knowing your identity as an individual, knowing your identity as a believer, you are more prone to suffer because one negative comment, one negative remark, and you take that home with you. You take that home with you if you're not careful. So I remember one time I was at something called a fitting, which is where you are trying on the pieces that are going to be displayed, whether it's for a showcase or a photo shoot or a runway show. And you're trying on the pieces so that the designer can see which set or which outfit suits you the best, like suits your skin tone, suits your body type. And you think, oh, it's just going to be me and the designer. And the designer is my same gender. So no, you have the designer, the stylist, sometimes the photographer, even, and sometimes random people, the assistant, and all of them have this lack of a filter, if you will, because they're not trying to hurt your feelings. They're talking amongst each other, but they're right in front of your face. You can hear what they're saying. So like, yeah, okay, this does not look, her skin does not look good with this. Or man, if only she was a few pounds lighter, or man, she needs to get a tan because it's not going to look good in pictures. Maybe we should get that other girl. So they're having these conversations in front of you, and for them, it's just business. I don't think, for the most part, that their intention is to be mean, but those comments will grate at you. So that is a huge low, or at least it was for me. And I'm sure other people will say the same thing. So, like, hearing people just dissect you physically in front of your face or near you, and then having to, usually you cross paths with other models or other people who are just as beautiful or beautiful in different ways, then you start thinking, oh man, if only I was taller, if only I was more toned, or if only I was, I don't know, a different race, I would be more successful. So there's a lot of these incriminating thoughts that come in and can cause you to spiral. But a high for sure is you will rub shoulders with, I mean, celebrities, like people that you admire or follow online, and they will be sitting right next to you getting their hair done. So it is, again, it's like a roller coaster all in one setting sometimes. Another thing is that you can be around luxury. And if you never experienced it before, when you get your first like paycheck or your first opportunity, it can be really hard to not become prideful or start overindulging yourself to try to keep up with the lifestyle that these other people have, not knowing the other end of it. Like most of the stuff people either rent or borrow, or they've had these pieces for years, and you're thinking they're shopping all the time. No, no. To reach that level where you can just splurge on these super expensive bags, that's usually wealth that's built up over time, that comes from generations. And so when you are a young person that is just easily, impressed, again, if you don't have that anchor, it can be really difficult to like maintain yourself.
Yeah, so you talked about having an anchor and being grounded. What helped you to stay grounded?
So community. I know that sounds cliche,
It's so
but
important.
community. It is so important. I struggled in the beginning of my career because I couldn't really find people like in my local church to connect with about what I was doing, because a lot of people just didn't get it, right? Not that they thought lowly of me, but they just couldn't relate, and they couldn't offer much insight, because it's not a traditional job working in fashion. So I went to a women's conference in my local area, South Florida, and one of the highlights of the conference, in between speakers, they had like a fashion show because someone in the church owned like a boutique or something. And most of the models, if I'm not mistaken, were members of that church. They were just like, yeah, I'll participate. But then they had the last person to walk in the show was an actual model. I could tell because I had seen her in other like secular spaces. And just she's really good, of course, really beautiful. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, like I wonder if she's actually a believer, like, or if she's just here for the gig. And how do I find out? Like, how do I get access to her? So I like researched the church and the brand, and they had tagged the model in one of their social media posts, and I sent the model a message like, oh hi, I just want to know if you are really a believer in Jesus, and how do you reconcile doing what you do, and honoring God at the same time. And she told me about this organization called Models for Christ, and so that's how I got connected with that. And so Models for Christ became the community that I joined many years ago. And then from there, I realized, oh, I'm not the only person that cares about this career path. And there's people who have been doing this way before me, before I was even born. And so there's actually a lot of believers in the industry, and there's a huge community out there. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just a matter of locating them, right? And making yourself available to serve. Yeah. And just using wisdom in your relationships, right? And not, spilling the beans about like, yeah, so and so is Christian, or they go to my church. Some people in the industry are undercover because they have to be, but having that safe haven, like I mentioned before, has been such a blessing for me to stay grounded. Because if I have a question, or if I feel uncomfortable, or if I've never worked with a certain brand before, I can write into the group chat and just say, hey, has anybody ever worked with this photographer? and somebody will reply and say, "Oh yeah, great guy," or someone will say, "Yes, don't do it." And thank God for community.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to share before we finish this episode?
Absolutely, if I may. There's a scripture in Psalms 139, I believe it's verse 14, that tells us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made,
Mm,
right? Fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's something that your soul deserves to know. But there are times where even though we might know something in our head, we need community to help it become realized in our heart. And so I just want to encourage anyone that falls upon this podcast, whether it's mine or any other ones,
yeah.
that community matters and there's a community that exists for you. Just know that if you feel like you cannot find that community in person, thank God for the internet. There's a community that exists for you online. So whether it's a Facebook group,
Mhm.
or a Zoom group or a WhatsApp group, find it, plug yourself in, and immerse yourself. Participate, right? Don't just be a silent listener, but participate, ask questions, give insight, and you'll be very surprised about how what you've been looking for exists just as at the on the other side of your vulnerability.
I love that. Well, I want to thank Lonnie for taking the time to have this faith filled conversation with me. I know the things that we discussed will encourage so many others in their faith. I would also like to encourage the listeners and viewers to find community that you can walk through the highs and lows of life with because we were created to be in community and life is better together. So until next time.